Welcome back to another Stampede Blue Colts cast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Matt Danley, and thank you guys for coming back. It has been one practice in the books for the Colts in minicamp. Quite an eventful day there at the Farm Bureau Center, and nobody else better than to have on the show than our own friend, George Bremer. George, thanks for hanging out with us, my man.
Yeah, glad to be here. I think it's no coincidence, too. Jake Arthur gets in the building, and boom, Andrew Luck's thrown again.
Yeah, we talked about that today. We thought, man, you know what? There's something going on here. I think they were just waiting to get you all scheduled up for Colts.com. But and you know what? I feel kind of bad because last night we had a show and I forgot to mention that. But if you guys don't know already, our own Jake Arthur from Stampede Blue was into Colts.com as a contributor. Definitely earned it. One of the guys who works his butt off all the time, did it the right way. Has always been the guy that not only helps anybody who needs anything at all, but is a hard worker and everything. So we are all very, very happy and proud for Jake Arthur there. And Jake got his first taste today, George, of actually, the credentials in minicamp. That's not something that most of us lowlies get very often. We're usually the training camp guys and get kind of turned away for the other credentials and stuff like that. But, it was, man, what a day to kind of whatever you want to call it, pop Jake's cherry, I suppose, there with the Colts. Andrew Luck's thrown again. Everybody's been talking about it. George, it's only fitting that we start our conversation off there. So as you said off air, it wasn't something that any of you expected. So there was no heads up like, hey, you guys might want to get out there 5 minutes early or nothing like that from the trailer or anything like that. What were your thoughts when you first saw Andrew Luck actually release the football?
Yeah, it was interesting because when we first walked out there, at least when I first got out there, he was heading back into the building. And I thought, well, there he goes. Whatever chance there was of him participating today is over because he had been out. Team was stretching. He went inside to the indoor facility, and it just seemed like whatever moment there might have been had passed. But then just about the time the team finished stretching with their drills and they started breaking up into individual groups, he started jogging back out. And we're like, this is interesting. And he put his helmet on, headed over to where the quarterbacks were. Everybody kind of moved down that way, migrated as close as they could be to that group. And he'd done drop backs before. So honestly, the first time he did it, I was like, okay, he's not going to throw. Drop back, he looked around, and as soon as the ball was released, it was almost, everybody sort of buzz started through all the media. And by that point, every camera was pointed over there. And probably the most scrutinized warm-up throws in the history of the
NFL. Right. And then, of course, we all kind of, I guess we exhale a bit of a relief, like, okay, there it is. Now the narrative, the conversation, it's all over with, at least for now. At least the pettiness in counting days and whatnot, for his non-throwing. But then I got back on Twitter for just a couple seconds. And of course, somebody's talking about the size of the damn football. Here we go. We're starting it all over. By the end of the day, it's going to be, will had been a Nerf football or something like that. And apparently it was a high school football regular. I mean, tell us, George, because I don't, honestly, I saw that and I straight up tuned out.
Yeah, it was a Wilson TD05 or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. Somebody had a photo, and these are the way things happen. It gets scrutinized like the Zapruder film or something, and people are blowing up still photos and trying to find what it was. But apparently it's a high school football, or one that's commonly used by high schoolers. So it's slightly lighter than regulation football, but it's nothing. It's really nothing other than they're at a point right now in the process where they want to put less strain on the arm. He said that one of the things that he's doing now, it's kind of interesting because it just kind of shows sort of all the wide array of things that he's been able to do during this process. One of the things he's working on right now is overhand tennis serves.
Yeah.
Because it's the same motion, but it doesn't put the same kind of stress on his arm. And so really it's just a matter of saying, hey, we could use the regulation football, but why? There's no need. We'll just go ahead and use the slightly lighter football. I don't think there's anything to read into that. It wasn't any kind of important kind of piece of the puzzle today. What is important is he's been throwing for about 2 weeks. I know there was a lot of speculation early on Twitter when the schedule changed a couple weeks ago. And some people said, I bet he's throwing behind closed doors. The Colts were in deny mode, of course. But it turns out those guys were right all along. He was throwing. This was not the first time he threw a football. It's just the first time we've seen him throw the football. And it's really, I think you could even feel it with the guys out on the field. There's a little bit of a lift there because it's that much closer to him coming back and being part of the ball team again.
Yeah, I think it. I think that George. I think that it'd be fair to say that a really large percentage of us, that whether it be fans or anybody who covers the team, really believed that Luck was throwing the football. I mean, weeks ago. I mean, and at something. I mean, look, you're not a quarterback in the NFL, and don't just sit there at home and throw the ball at something. Whether it be a couch cushion or whatever. Obviously that. I mean, it's not like that counts, but you know what I mean. So the guy was definitely throwing a football at some point. Whether he was, kind of like he said today, or I think Reich maybe it was said today, that he went in on his own and did his own workouts and threw the Duke, and stuff like that. Luck had said he'd been throwing it for a couple of weeks now. It really is just honestly a relief. And I don't even know if it's so much a relief that we didn't expect him to be throwing the football. It was a relief that it finally was. I guess it's so pathetic almost that it's a relief that it was on film, that somebody saw it, and it was at a practice, and everything is kind of, I guess you could say, swept under the rug a little bit now, and now we can kind of just go forward without the ridiculous qualifiers of if Luck's healthy, if Luck's back, if Luck's going to do, all of that stuff goes away now, hopefully. And, I was glad also that he explained it because as far as the different sizes of the balls that he was using in his press conference, kind of discussed that, yes, I have thrown, the regulation football, but this is just part of my deal. This is what I'm doing. I throw balls, basically saying like baseballs or round balls. I also throw, we do the tennis serve. And he was kind of just saying, I do all kinds of this stuff. It turns his wrist in different ways. It works his elbow and his shoulder in different ways and stuff like that. And I think that was key to really, and I thought he was really open about kind of how he has gone about his process, especially as of late. I was really happy to hear him talk so openly about everything that's been going on. Not only that, George, but he seemed really stoked, man. I mean, I don't know if we've seen or heard him talk so not only matter-of-factly, but just, almost like a normal person, because you see him in some press conferences and he's always kind of like, yeah, he's just dull and duh. And it didn't come off that way at all, this year or this today. It was very enthused and excited, and he just seemed very comfortable, which that within itself made me very comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was kind of unchained a little bit too, because I think really for most of the past year and a half or so, when we have had his availability, he's been guarded. He's had to be, because he has to be careful with what he says. And if he puts a timeline out there, then it's going to cause all sorts of ruckus. If he doesn't put a timeline out there, it's going to cause a different kind of ruckus. And I think today he finally felt, probably for the first time since the surgery happened, like he didn't have to be careful with what he said. He really felt more free, more open. It's the first time he gave us a real look at what his schedule is like. I mean, he was talking about throwing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, takes Thursday off. So don't freak out. He's not out there Thursday. We can't stress that enough to everybody. He will not practice Thursday. That's already planned. It's part of his routine now. Then he comes back Friday, and that's all because they're trying to get what he's going to do in the regular season. 3 days of practice, a couple days off, then a big game day on Sunday. And so you're going to see that happen in training camp too. I thought that was interesting that he was open about that. There's going to be a couple days of training camp where Andrew Luck's not going to practice because it's going to be scheduled that way. This is what they want to do, get him into that. From what I understand, this is from Tom House, what he was doing out there in California. This is a schedule that they kind of came up with to get his shoulder sort of acclimated to the workload, to get him to a point where what he needs to do during the season is the regular motion, the regular function for his shoulder. And I think we've not seen him be open like that before. really about anything, but certainly about this situation, to where he's saying, look, not just here's a pretty detailed look at what I'm doing, here's why I'm doing it as well. And I think that all of that kind of goes to speak to how confident he is, how comfortable he is with where he's at now in this process. And I think he should make everyone else a little more comfortable, a little more confident in it as well.
Absolutely. And I think that I think just in general, the Colts fan base was super stoked today with not only the throwing, but his attitude coming back and all the things that you said. You know, just it was comforting, and it really was exciting. So
It's
I'm
fun.
excited.
I mean, like you were talking, it's fun to see him kind of be stoked, him
Right.
be excited about this, because it's very interesting to watch him uh, sort of react, I guess, the way the fans react to this. You know, he was responding and he was acting the way you imagine most fans were watching him. It was the same kind of mentality from him. And I think it's fun to see a guy who is so composed usually and so professional come out and sort of let that guard down and show that human side, I guess, for a better word.
Yeah, and I agree with that most definitely. But you know, Andrew Luck wasn't as much as the attention that was on him, and rightly so for sure. There was some other, you know, things that were going on today, and like I said, once I started seeing, you know, the other stuff that was coming out, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of talk throughout practice about what was going on. So, talk to us about how much of the open portion did you guys get to see? Were you guys able to sit out there like just like training camp all day?
Yeah, we were out there the whole day, which is nice. That's always kind of a fun part of it. It's been that way since OTA started about 3 weeks ago. So we're able to watch the whole practice. I would say that probably wasn't that big of a day in terms of the team as a whole, as it has been throughout all of the spring. There's a lot of guys that aren't out there. Quincy Wilson was back today on a limited basis. It's the second time that I've seen him out there. It's good to see him get back out and get involved. Naheem Hines came out about halfway through. That's probably the one big thing to watch. You never really know, though, this time of year what, we'll see if he's back out there tomorrow. The whole abundance of caution thing, that's the buzzword this time of year, because that is what's going on. I mean, if you've got a hangnail, they might hold you out at this time of year just because it's not worth it. It's not any real point in keeping you out there if there's any risk at all.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy that was missing that you would like to see is Chester Rogers. He went down Thursday in the final OTA practice. He wasn't going today, but Frank Reich didn't see all that about that when we talked to him afterwards. I would say that's been if there's been a disappointing thing about the spring, that's been it. There's been no source of the time that we've been able to be out there and watch who you think are going to be pretty big contributors for this team, be it a Quincy Wilson, Nate Hairston, obviously Clayton Gathers hasn't gone. We knew Malik Hooker wouldn't be out there. Matt's been out all spring. So many guys like that haven't been taking part. So it's tough to really get any kind of sense of what the team's going to look like as a whole. And of course, number 12 has not been with them either. So I think that's one thing that as we get closer to training camp here, it's going to be exciting to see those first couple of days of training camp to really get the first look at the full team together. That still hasn't happened yet.
I was excited to see kind of what the like the oh, I'm an idiot. What the offensive line and whatnot was really looking like. And it was kind of, and not only that, but the defensive line. So aside from like kind of the other starters, I guess you could say, that were available, we really saw what we saw along the offensive line. They had Costanzo, Nelson, Kelly, Slauson, and Howard from left to right. And Jim Irsay talked about how he wanted, basically, he didn't mention Slauson. He mentioned that he wanted to see Braden Smith. and that he wanted to see Denzel Good at right tackle. I thought that was interesting that he kind of went in that direction today while he talked. Um, I guess he could have kind of made that sound better for Matt Slauson and Austin Howard, as in saying these guys are great. We like what they've provided with them coming in free agency, and hopefully this will allow our youth to really come up in the next couple of years or something like that. As opposed to saying we really want Braden Smith and Denzel Good, but we've got Matt Slauson and Austin Howard right now. I mean, that's kind of and maybe it was just the way I read it because I didn't listen to it. He's just not somebody that I want to listen to, when I'm trying to actually gauge whatever. He's Irsay, to get his comments, is somebody you really want to just read the transcript on, because he's
a stream of consciousness guy.
Yeah, he means well, and when he's talking normal and he's not in front of cameras and microphones, he really talks fairly normal. But he there's always a and hundreds of them. So I was like, nope, I'm just going to read the transcripts on this one, and we're going to go from there. But I did like, I like that offensive line. Doesn't that? It sounds pretty solid. I think that we, most of us see that that's what they want. That's what they've been pretty consistent with Slauson at right guard and Austin and Howard at right tackle. But I'm kind of curious and a little surprised, I guess, that we haven't heard about Jack Mewhort rotating in with the first unit very much.
Yeah, Jack has been mostly with the second team. It took him a little while. The first week or so that the practice was open, he wasn't participating, and then he kind of it's been ramping up as they go along. But yeah, that unit that you just said, Costanzo and Nelson, Kelly, Slauson, and Howard, that's been pretty consistently the line. They've messed around a little bit. Joe Haig was out there one practice at right tackle with the ones. Costanzo's had a couple days off when we've been out there, and when that's happened, Good switched over and played left tackle spot. So it looks like he's the swing tackle right now, which makes sense. You would expect that. But there's not been a lot of change there like you've seen elsewhere. Defensively, the defensive line, we've seen a lot of bodies rotate up there. The linebacker spot has been different every week as far as the combinations there and who's playing with which position and with which group. So, the offensive line does seem to be taking shape, and I think there is a lot of reason to be optimistic there, especially people forget how banged up that line was last year. Ryan Kelly, for the most part, didn't play. He was really early in training camp is when he really got hit. And I think when you look at the whole season from the offensive line, Jeremy Vunovich started 16 games at left guard. That wasn't the plan going into the year,
right,
by any stretch of the imagination. So I don't think they ever got their best case scenario last year. And then that's obviously been the case for what, 5-6 years now, where they've had to go deep into that depth. I think that's what's most exciting. I know I'm kind of rambling on this one, but that to me is what's most exciting about the line this year is there are guys like Jack Mewhort, like Braden Smith, like Denzel Good, who aren't with that first unit, who are intriguing, who you feel good about if they have to go out there. Joe Haig, you can throw him in that list as well. That's not been the case the last several years.
Right. Absolutely. And one of the things that they keep talking about is how Haig has been kind of maneuvering into center, how he's been, he's going to be that utility guy for the Colts this year, which is really interesting because he is a solid backup at guard and at tackle. Bringing in Mewhort there, they said that he was at left guard. So that's obviously interesting as well. I think that there is a much better bit of depth this year than the Colts have had in ages. It seems almost like, they definitely haven't had that in the past several years. So good. We got George on here. Sorry about the connection, guys, but we got George on here. He's on the phone now. So George, we got you back. And I was basically just going in on what we were talking about as far as, Jack Mewhort being at left guard a little bit and how the Colts have had better, I guess you could say better depth than they've had, it seems like, in ages, almost in forever. It's just a really intriguing group this year, especially with Howard there. They apparently like what they've seen out of Good. So, I mean, this line is something that we need to be kind of excited about. Now, across the trenches from them, the defensive line, the starters have been Sheard, Basham, Danico Autry, and Al Woods. To me, that's pretty interesting. I didn't necessarily, I mean, I don't have anything against Danico Autry. I think Danico Autry is what the film that I watched of him. I watched a couple of Ted Wynn's breakdowns on him about how good he was, but he's not much of the pass rush type guy from the interior, but he is a technician with his hands. He's really fun to watch. And I'm a little surprised that Al Woods getting the start there, but he's definitely going to be the early down option there inside.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And he's such a consummate pro. I mean, Al Woods, I think he's already become a leader for that group, and he's somebody who's been there. I mean, that's one of the things about this defense. It's so young. So many guys who are going to play big roles, been in the league. They're either rookies or this is their second year in the league. And Al Woods is a guy, I think, who's kind of seen it all, done it all, a calming influence, if you will, out there on the field for some of the young guys. Autry's been interesting. I think that 3 technique spot's going to be interesting in general anyway. I mean, Tyquan Lewis, there's some talk of him sliding there eventually. He hasn't really worked a lot this spring. He's had some nagging stuff. If there's one thing with Frank Reich so far, he's been a big believer in that this time of year they really don't have to give you much injury information, and he's really not really revealed a lot of that. So there's a lot of guys that are out that we're not entirely certain what their situation is or when they'll be back. But I think a guy like Tyquan Lewis could eventually fit into that spot. I think there's a lot of You've heard Frank Reich say it probably 20 times already this spring. They want to have 8 starters. They want to keep fresh legs in there. And I think that's the way that they look at, without having a Von Miller or Khalil Mack, somebody like that, who you can kind of focus on to go get the quarterback. I think their answer to that right now is to go out and throw waves of defenders at these teams and hope that the fresh legs wear down opposing offensive lines. That leads to a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, when you get to Reich and you're talking about what he had kind of said earlier, because he had said that, everybody was there basically, and that he said that Rodgers or Chester was limited. But man, there were a ton of guys that weren't there. It's just kind of funny that he said that. And when I was listening to the press conference live, I was pretty like, wow, good. So that means Darius Leonard was there. Everybody was good to go. That's exciting, especially on your first day of minicamp. But we end up hearing that DJ White, Marlon Mack, Clayton Geathers, Malik Hooker, Darius Leonard, Vunovich, Deshaun Bond, Chris McCain, who's dealing with the legal stuff, Krishawn Hogan, Eric Swope, and Tyquan Lewis were all out. None of those guys practiced today. So just so that there's a little bit of clarification there. And I was glad that Andrew Walker clarified that in his article today, because I thought that was important, because a lot of people would get the wrong impression, I think, from that. Not that it necessarily means anything, but to me, I know what I felt when I heard him say that. And I was like, wow, That's exciting that everybody's there, most everybody. I didn't assume that McCain was there, but I figured everybody else was there, at least on the field. So that had me up, I was like, wow, great. So then we at least saw Darius Leonard on the field. I think that was the guy that I've been really hoping to see. I didn't expect that Hooker or, them. But I was also glad to see, like you mentioned earlier, that Quincy Wilson was actually on the field. So he he rotated in with the first group and second group. I think they rotated a bunch of guys today, and I think that's pretty consistent about at every position, right?
They've really been rotating the defense, especially. The offense has been somewhat consistent as far as who's working with the ones and who's working with the twos. The defense has been almost a different kind of group from one drill to the next, and I think that's intentional. I mean, we've heard Reich talk about it. They're trying to kind of throw as much information as these guys as they can, and I think they want to see them working with each other in different groups. I think it's not just a matter of what can this guy do? They want to see what happens when Wilson's out there with, Henry Tolliver. And then what's he out there? What's it look like when he's out there with the Seer? And they want to see the groups work together, if that makes sense. And they're trying a lot of that right now, just kind of experimenting, mix and match and see what it leads to. And then the way Reich was talking, when the pads come on and training camp happens, it gets serious. That's when the real competition will start. And that's when I think a depth chart will start to emerge. And to me, with a clean slate as it is right now and such a young group over there on defense, in my thinking, that's really a perfect way to approach this. Let everybody go at almost a shotgun start, if you will,
right,
to this preseason. And then once you get in and you have all the tools and you have everybody out there, hopefully, come training camp, then you start the real competition. And I think Yep.
Okay, I kind of figured it cut out for just a second, but I thought you were really close to being done anyway. So, yeah, I agree. Let's see. We went through both lines. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with some of the linebacker talk and a little bit further into what we saw today in the first day of practice at minicamp for the Indianapolis Colts. All right, guys, we're back. So let's talk about this, what they had. So Darius Leonard was not in. With what we talked about just before the break, the Colts have been rotating a lot of guys defensively all through. Like you said, fairly consistent throughout the offense. For that matter, it sounded like some of the tight ends had some nice days today as well. But we saw Tyrell Adams at will, Anthony Walker at the Mike, Zaire Franklin at the Sam today. And the first two cornerbacks they had were Nate Hairston and Pierre Desir. That's something that we talked about a few nights ago, I think maybe last week, about the possibility. And because if I'm not mistaken, last year at training camp, George, didn't we see Hairston lined up outside initially?
Yeah, he was outside initially. He was, especially a couple of days that Melvin was hurt. He was out there playing out wide, and then they kind of slowly gravitated him into the nickel slot.
That's kind of what I thought. My memory was right with that. So with that, I mean, they didn't put Quincy out there because obviously Hairston's been through practice more. You move him in kind of slowly and I guess you could say gingerly. But that is another thing here. Are they even consider? I mean, I know that you would think that most of this will start with a clean slate. But when we look about last year, how important Hairston was to manning that slot corner, that nickel role, what are we thinking this year? If not necessarily if he becomes a starter, but let's just say that they like him outside better in this scheme than they do in the nickel. What does that necessarily do to the nickel role there? Does that open it up for maybe a little more of the safeties to rotate in a little more often, you think? Because we've talked about three safeties, previously. Chris and I talked about it last night, or does it open maybe the door for a guy like Moore, or somebody like that, or even Milton, because Milton's been a nickel guy there, it seems like, for a couple years.
Yeah, it definitely opens the door for Kenny Moore, and it definitely opens the door for Chris Milton. But I also think that you will see some things with the safeties, because I think, honestly, I don't think the defense is going to be much different than the offense in the sense that they're going to move guys around and they're going to try to find a way to get the 11 best players on the field. And I know it sounds simplistic and everybody tries to do that, but I don't know if that was always necessarily the case here the last 6 years, to where, once they kind of got a guy into a role like Harrison last year, they kind of stuck with that and moved everybody else around, around them. And as many injuries as they went through at corner last year, I don't remember Nate Harrison making a start or really making any significant time on the outside once the season started. Mm-hmm. And I think this year, I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think you'll see guys, be the nickel one week and be on the outside the next week, see a three safety set because they think it helps against one team, see more of a true nickel corner the next week. I really think they're going to look to match up and to change that personnel from week to week.
I'd be interested to see if that does something with their technique as a secondary option. Does Hairston have the same technique with his footwork as far as in the slot or on the outside as a boundary option? That kind of stuff there would make me feel like that could be an advantage, coaching advantage for the Colts in their defense. But but then again, it just could also be the simple fact that they just want to see who the best guys are in what group, who's here, who's there, what's the best lineup for us defensively as well. That could just be, either one or the other. So Grover Stewart and Marcus Hunt, along with John Simon and Anthony Johnson, got the front four, second unit there today. How are we seeing John Simon right now, George? Are we seeing him as a maybe even a possible casualty come cut time? I know it's really early for that, but I'm just curious as to your opinion on it. Or are we, are we just seeing John Simon slowly plug away, looking good in the second team role? He's just not in the first team unit right now.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he looks like in camp and even in the preseason games, because this is an interesting situation. I don't know that he's a great fit for the role that he's in right now. And I know that Frank Reich talked about it a couple weeks ago and basically said he's a football player and we like a lot of what he brings intangible wise and what he brings intelligence wise. And so that'll make up for maybe some lack of speed or some other areas that he's lacking. I mean, he looks pretty small. When he's in the group with the rest of the defensive ends, he looks pretty small. You can get away with that if you're Robert Mathis and you're a freak athletically. But it'll be interesting to see how and if that works. There's some people who think maybe he should get a look at Sam linebacker, maybe even in the middle. But that's not something that seems to be in the cards right now. And I think he is a guy that as you start to think about the 53-man roster, there's a possibility that there's not a fit for him here. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. I know they like him as a football player. I think anybody who watched him in Houston, anybody who watched him last year here in Indianapolis understands what he can bring to a football team. But when you're looking at a defense that's based on speed, that's based on athleticism, the way this unit is, there are some questions about how he fits into that kind of a scheme.
Right. And he's not incredibly old or anything like that. Football old, but you just have to think of Kamiko Toure, in my opinion. He's not a guy, in my opinion, just on build and traits and the way he plays the game. He's not a guy who's going to kick in very often inside. Maybe they do it in a late down possibility where they want nothing but just straight speed pressure from the interior, outside on the edge and everything. But I think he's a guy who could possibly fill that role that you're just talking about for Simon. Some see him as a possible Sam option. He doesn't fit in as a DN. I think that Kamiko Toure has a real shot at beating him out as the rotational guy, as the edge defensive end. And I think that he's another guy who could possibly play some Sam, which I think also puts Antonio Morrison in a real big pickle.
Yeah, there's a couple guys who played a lot for this football team in recent years who are looking at some challenges with this roster this year. And I think when you're 4-12, you're coming off a 4-12 season, it should be that way. So it's kind of, I think that's kind of the natural progression. If you're going to go out and improve, then some guys are going to have to be left by the wayside. And I think that Morrison's a guy that you're looking at who might not fit in this defense. And there are other younger, more athletic guys who could take his place. But I think that's what's so intriguing about the defense as a whole is that there aren't too many spots that you can kind of feel right now. You can put down somebody's name in ink and say that's a starter. I think Jabal Sheard probably is in that group. That might be the end of the list. To say where he's playing right now is where he's going to start on September 9th against the Bengals. Everybody else is wide open, and I really think with a group this young, and I've said it a bunch of times, but I really think with a group this young, it's kind of perfect because you're putting that carrot out there and you're telling those guys, look, there are almost 11 spots open on this defense. Go get one.
Right.
And for a guy like Toure and a guy like Leonard, who Toure's been out there a little bit, he hasn't been out as much as you would like to see either. He's had some nagging things going on this spring. Guys who probably didn't get as much time in the spring as you would want them to get, especially as rookies. It's a good situation because now you're going to come into training camp and those spots are there. So let's see what you've got. Go out there and see if you can take a spot.
I'm excited to see him actually suited up. There might, if I'm going with position, I'm really super excited. I'm intrigued to see who really kind of stands out amongst the linebackers, but I'm really excited about the wide receiver group. And if we're going absolutely individual, I can't wait to see Kamiko Toure in practice in training camp. I think he is going to light it on fire. And I mean, I really do believe that if he comes back to training camp and is 100% healthy and ready to go, and there's none of this, undisclosed injury stuff with either him or Leonard or anybody else, he is going to be a guy, in my opinion, that is just making us salivate on the sideline. I think that he's one of those guys that really jumps out in camp, and people are really trying to temper our expectations at that point, in my opinion, George, because there's always a couple of them. We're always over there watching. I mean, we were impressed with Jonathan Hankins last year. We were pretty impressed with, some of the linemen, the way that they held up. We were impressed with some other guys, whether it be in the safety group, the wide receivers. We were impressed with Eric Swope and how he looked. Or is that right? Yeah. And some other guys as well. And that gets, I mean, whether you want to call it excited or really just projecting to the season, in an excited way, however you want to word that. That's something that gets us wound up over there. We start seeing some of that. And it's like, wow, that could be something that really gets used in during the season. And of course, the Colts, Nyheim Hines came up limping today, so he's probably going to be out the rest of minicamp. It would be my guess. No point in messing with that if it's even a little tweak. That's not something they want to go aggravating. So it's going to be somebody in Toure, I think, that is a guy, if he comes back and there's no limitations on him, that we're just kind of elbowing each other on the sidelines going, look at this guy. He's going to be something. And I really think that the Colts are going to be lucky and happy that they got him. The one guy, and we've already mentioned him, Darius Leonard, that is a guy who absolutely has to get on the field soon. I mean, he just can't wait any longer. I know that he has the injury. I know that they have to be smart about his injury as well. He's not different in that regard. But, man, he lost some critical time, I think, just to get himself out there. I mean, it's just like a kid who doesn't get any active time during the day. Yeah, he, did 50 jumping jacks, but did he run around and chase and play with the other kids, kind of type thing? He really lost some valuable just running around time with his teammates and such, and just going through the drills and the structure of practice, in my opinion, as a rookie. And not only that, but as a rookie who's expected to start, George.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that really quickly on draft weekend started being penciled in as kind of the starting wheel linebacker, and people sort of just started to take that for granted. And now, he's kind of international man of mystery out there right now. Nobody has any idea where Darius Leonard is, what he's going to be able to do out there. There hasn't been any look at him. Toure had some flashes in rookie minicamp. You saw some of his get off then. There's been some clips on social media that have been out there that show some of his power. I know Chris Ballard has repeatedly brought up Mark Anderson's name. The year the Bears went to the Super Bowl, Anderson was a rookie out of Alabama. He had 10 sacks that season. He was just a designated pass rusher. He was really in almost primarily on third down, other obvious passing downs, and he was able to be that effective. And I think that's kind of a role that Ballard sees for Toure. He'll be a guy that's going to come in when they know what the other team's going to do and go after the quarterback and be effective and productive and make plays. But with Leonard, it's hard to even kind of start to imagine what kind of role he can have. Everybody knows the speed, the athleticism, that's on his college tape. But, what does he look like running out there in a pro defense? We're not going to find that out until late July at the earliest.
Right. And, back to Toure for just another moment. That's kind of the thing that has everybody excited about him, that you can come in, have him on just third down, straight balls to the wall and go after the quarterback. That's going to be, he's going to love that. And he kind of reminds you of what Yannick Ngakwe's role was in his first year or a couple years ago when he really got noticed. A lot of people were like, wow, who is this guy? And he was a pass rushing crazy man. That would be fun to see Toure kind of fit that mold, get maybe 6 to 8 sacks, and just be a guy that, he kind of, like you said, a silent assassin. You don't see him very much, and the next thing you know, you see him busting through and creating some real pressure on a quarterback, whether it be in second or third downs, but mostly passing downs, of course. So a lot of excitement there. Okay, so tell me how Brissett looked today as well. Some of the quarterbacks we saw, how they connected with some of the tight ends throughout practice today, but how has Brissett looked? I mean, from your eye, do you see him really measured and polished this year compared to last year?
I thought early on this spring he looked really comfortable and really in sync, and I thought this offense really suits him well, and I still feel that way. I thought the last 2 practices that we saw, last Thursday and then today, he had his struggles. He missed some throws that looked like easier throws, but you're going to have that. You're going to have the ups and downs. I think by and large he looks like this offense suits him pretty well. You see him getting rid of the ball so quickly, and you wonder, how on earth did this not happen a year ago? I think that was one of the biggest things people complained about throughout the season was, he's holding the ball too long. He's not decisive enough. You're seeing him make decisions pretty quickly out there, get rid of the ball pretty quickly. That's not just talk right now from this coaching staff. It's something we've seen all spring. They are doing everything with a purpose, everything with tempo, speed. That's really the theme out there. Everything they do, they're doing it quickly, and I think that has suited Jacoby Brissett pretty well so far. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to it. Rarely are you, but I'm looking forward to some of the preseason games to see him run the team. I think not since Matt Hasselbeck was here are we going to be as interested in watching the backup quarterback play.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's it almost made me not want to talk about him before Andrew Luck threw a football. Now that he has thrown a football, I kind of want to talk about him. It's kind of just works in weird ways. But the Colts also had a bunch of tryout guys in today. Too many really to name them all, because I can tell you that I don't know any of them, nor have I haven't heard of any of them. I think I've heard of the running back Jordan Huff, but I can't quite tell you if I have or not. So a lot of guys there. Apparently, Juante Baldwin, made a play tonight or today. Andrew Walker put something in his article about him. But other than that, there was some, a couple guys that we talked about last night that I talked to Chris about. Kason Williams was a guy who I thought might be a guy who could flash. Apparently, he made a really nice play today, making a catch on a fade route and a couple other plays as well. Kason Williams is a guy that the Colts have gone after since last offseason, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a guy who with a lot of length and he's got good size. I was pretty excited to see that he had made a play. I think that there's some other guys that are, looking to make some plays in this wide receiver core. And this is why I get so excited about them. I really feel like they are a group who can really impress and really make people interested again, especially in preseason when it comes to it, when everybody gets to see it on TV. This is going to be a fun battle. I think it's going to be a fun battle. I think the linebacking battle is a necessity, but I think the wide receiver battle is really where the enjoyment will be at for this summer and into preseason.
And there's a lot of young guys that they're excited about, and there's a lot of young guys who are getting a lot of good reps. And that's one, if there's an upside to Chester Rogers being hurt today, it's that a lot of guys got some more opportunities as a result of that. And I know one guy whose name I haven't heard a lot, but I've seen him out there. He was running with the ones a little bit a couple weeks ago. Just in very limited fashion, but you've seen that too. You've been out at training camp often enough. You'll see in 3 receiver sets and 4 receiver sets some pretty interesting combinations. But there's a taller receiver. His name's James Wright, who I think they like what they've seen just from some of the times that I've seen him get out there, some of the people he's been out there with. Nick Sirianni, when we had him earlier this spring, was praising KJ Brent. He really likes what he's seen from him so far. Drez Anderson had a really good play, not this time, but on Thursday. He made a pretty big play, and people were kind of remarking about that. And then Deion Kane has been outstanding in the red zone drills. And I think when you look at the struggles that this team has had recently in the red zone, that's a glaring need. So if that's something that he can carry over when the pads come on and when the bullets go live, so to speak, that could be a major contribution for this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anybody else that we haven't really heard about that looked, whether it be solid or just kind of caught your eye today, whether it was a big play or just look impressive, whether it be physique wise, just whatever? Who was it that caught your eye that nobody's really talking about otherwise?
Yeah, people know the name because he was here last year at the end of the year. But the one guy that I've really had my eye on all spring and I'm really intrigued about because I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for him is Ross Travis. I think that he made a play today in, I believe it was 7-on-7, where he beat a linebacker, which is obviously a terrible mismatch.
Right.
And he scored on a, looked like it was a seam route. He went and he dunked the ball over the goalpost. Matthias Farley kind of got on him a little bit about it right after it happened. But there's a guy who just, the athleticism there is obvious. He's been mentored by Tony Gonzalez, who knows a thing or two about playing the tight end position and being a former basketball player in that role. It's just, there's a lot of intrigue there with that guy. I thought that he came in last year, even in that limited time, he had some flashes towards the end of the season. He'd only been there a couple weeks. So he's a guy that I think you really want to keep your eye on and see, can he develop? Is there something there? Because obviously we know Ebron and Jack Doyle are going to be the top two tight ends. But after that, Eric Swope's still working his way back. We're not going to see him until training camp. There's a lot of opportunity out there in that tight end group. And I really think Ross Travis, to me, one of the most intriguing guys on the roster right now.
Yeah, love him, dude. I mean, honestly, he's one of the few guys that we've been pretty much talking about as often as possible. He's a guy that you're right. He doesn't get a lot of pub or anything like that, but I am curious. He's lost some weight, right? He dropped about 8 to 10 pounds. Did that make a significant difference in his look or anything like that to you? Did it kind of lighten him up like significantly to where it was noticeable?
Yeah, I don't think it's really noticeable with him because he always had that kind of basketball player physique, so he still kind of does. But you can just, he's so quick. And I think in that group, Ebron's pretty darn athletic too. So you see that as well. But in that tight end group, he stands out because of what he can do athletically.
So tell me about him being mentored by Tony Gonzalez. I don't know that I've heard that.
Yeah, he was talking about that a little bit last year when obviously his career started in Kansas City over there with Chris Ballard. And he said, he had kind of hooked up with Tony Gonzalez. I'm not really sure if it was because he was on the Chiefs or if it had more of a California connection. I believe Travis is from California, or at least he was training out there. But he has kind of been at Tony Gonzalez's side through the off seasons. And I don't know if he did it this off season or not, but he had in the past. So I assume he did again. Just trying to learn what he can from him. And I think that, how can that be anything but a positive for him as his career goes forward, to kind of learn it at that guy's heel and take in, whatever tricks of the trade that he's getting. And I think you can tell with Ross Travis from a little bit, I got to talk to him last year, he's a confident guy. And that matters with these guys who are kind of battling for that roster spot. You don't want to be looking over your shoulder all the time. You want to be going out there, trying to prove yourself, trying to be your best every day. And I think he's in a position to do that because he believes he belongs at this level. He believes he can be a difference maker at this level. And it'll be fun to see if he can actually grow into a player who does that.
Yeah, I think that he can, most definitely. Our concern, namely with him, as far as where does he fit, is that you've got Doyle, you've got you've got Ebron, and then you've got a couple other guys that are all fighting for that last bit of real estate with the tight end group. You've got Daryl Daniels, who apparently looked really good today, was a guy that we kind of almost counted out. Then you've got Ross Travis, who we love. We've been trying to find a spot for him, and then you've got everybody else. You've got Eric Swope that you don't know whether he's coming back right away. And who am I forgetting? The tight end group. I'm forgetting somebody obvious, and it's.
I'm trying to think too, because I know where you're going with that. But yeah, Swope has been not around, and I think that's going to be a tough spot for him. We were talking about that earlier this spring, and here's a guy who's at a real crossroads, and we haven't seen a lot of him. And that, we go back to Darius Leonard, Kamoko Toure, some of these guys who have not been out there as much. It could be a tough thing for Swope to overcome. These guys have been out there. They've been impressed with the coaches, been learning the offense. He's still rehabbing. He needs to get out there and join this competition soon.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I don't think we were forgetting anybody because it was just Swope. I think we were talking so much about Swope's upside, that we've, kind of not bypassed him. But, I've not really been counting Mo Alley Cox. I just don't think that he's a guy who even has an opportunity to be a roster guy for another year or two, to be quite honest. Anyway.
Yeah, he's still a project.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
So the Colts do have Ebron, they've got Doyle, and they've got, whether you consider it Travis and Daniels or Swoop and Daniels or Swoop and Travis, or however you want to look at it, the Colts have to find that nice mix of available blockers and playmakers. But we were talking mainly about what Ross Travis opens up down the middle of the field, like a Travis Kelce type role, if he can get his feet quick enough throughout the season. That a lot of what the Colts have at tight end outside of Jack Doyle really makes Jack Doyle's job so much easier. It'll take some of the targets off of him, but in the end, I think it'll improve the dynamic of that tight end position, especially when you've got a guy like Ebron and Swoop, if he's healthy, who can stretch the field, outside and can line up in multiple positions. But you've got a guy like Ross Travis, who is a capable blocker, not a great one, but a guy who is an effort blocker for sure, and can run that seam and has the height and the length and the jumping ability and the athleticism to pull down some of the, the high throws over the top of the back of the linebacker's head, that kind of stuff. That's what makes him, to me, so exciting. And I just hope that he gets an opportunity to do it, because I think wherever he goes, given the opportunity, he's going to be a damn good player, man.
He's got all the skill. I mean, he's got all the tools that you want to see. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, he's got the smarts. He seems like a guy who's a breakout candidate, and that's why I think, to me, there's a couple of guys that I really can't wait to see at training camp. I'm 100% with you on Toure. Leonard, just because we have not seen him. Right. Can't wait to see Quentin Nelson the first day the pads come on. There's a couple guys you're really excited to see. Ross Travis is right up there for me because I really want to see, what he's able to do. And that's going to go on into the preseason. I can't wait to see this offense in particular, the things that they do with the tight ends, the things that they do in terms of moving guys around. I really think it's going to be fun to watch Ross Travis as he works into this scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this offensive scheme is just going to be that much more exciting when you consider all the different options that they've got, can move so many people around, whether it be from the running back position. Tell me about Wilkins. Have you guys seen anything from him that really kind of caught your eye?
Not a lot, but I think today it seemed like he got a little more work than he has in the past. Part of that's probably because Hines came up, lame in the middle of practice. But he's a guy too that I think there's a couple of guys that you think it's going to take until the pads come on. So much of his game is his vision and the way he reacts to things. As they unfold on the field. And it's tough to do that in shorts right now. I mean, it's just not something that's gonna really stand out. So he's another guy that you may have to wait till the preseason games come around before he starts to really make an impact and catch everybody's eye.
Yeah, everybody looks like they've got good vision when there's no pads on. It makes it kind of difficult to figure it out. But I'm excited to see him because watching his tape was almost enough to put you to sleep because he was so overbearingly patient. You did get to see some of his open field speed, which isn't game breaking, but he has a nice mix of speed. He's patient. Like you said, a lot of it depends on his vision. I don't think he's going to be a major contributor this year, but I think he has the ability to be a significant one at some point if things go his way. And I think that he could be a guy who might catch some people by surprise. He's an interesting guy, I think, for sure. I'm interested to see what he can do. Obviously, Nyheim Hines is the guy that you really want to be that guy. The only issue with, and we talked about this right after the draft, I believe, the only issue with Wilkins is he's got that third and short yardage frame, but he's not that kind of runner. That's not who he is. So I think this running back position it seems like it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, but guys like Ferguson are going to have to absolutely blow crap up if they hope to get on this roster. So it's going to be an interesting running back group because they've got some nice weapons that can be moved around. So George, was there anything else, any quotes today or anything that maybe caught you by surprise or that really kind of stuck in your craw there or anything today?
Yeah, not really. I mean, today was a pretty straightforward day because of the Andrew Luck situation. I mean, once he came out and he started throwing, it became, pretty much all about Andrew Luck.
Right.
We really got to talk to Irsay, and we got to talk with Frank Reich, and we got to talk with Andrew Luck, and I think that was pretty good for everybody at that point. It was kind of funny to watch the way that kind of overtook everything, and it's going to be, a bit more of that tomorrow, I would imagine, because the coordinators are going to talk. And, I'm sure most of Nick Sirianni's session is going to be spent talking about Andrew Luck and what he's seen from him so far, and, how excited he is to get his hands on him and get him out there on the field. I guess that's the quote that stood out to me, was when Luck was talking about training camp and being ready for training camp. And he said not just to be there, not just to participate, but to get better and to help the team get better. I think he's looking forward to competing. When we talked earlier in the show about his excitement, not just excited about putting this injury behind him and getting back on the field. He's excited about playing in this offense, playing with this group of guys. And we were talking today, outside of T.Y. Hilton, obviously, and Chester Rogers a little bit in 2016, nobody on this team has really, Jack Doyle, nobody else on this team has really caught a pass from Andrew Luck before. They don't know who he is. He doesn't know who they are. I think it's going to be a really interesting preseason in terms of that chemistry. I'm sure they're going to spend some time together out in California or here in Indiana somewhere, in June and July before they get to Westfield. He's going to get together with the receivers and probably the tight ends. But I think that's part of the excitement for him. He wants to get out there. To hear him talking about not just to participate, but to get better. He wants to get out there and he wants to compete. And I think, that's probably something every fan out there can get behind, it, to see Andrew Luck back out there with purpose on the field with his teammates.
Oh, no doubt about it. He definitely put Colts Nation in an uproar today. It was exciting it was exciting because you could feel it on Twitter. You could feel the fact that, it was on every news outlet, every Twitter or every sports industry had it out there, whether it was actually NFL related content or not. They had something in their ticker at least about Andrew Luck throwing a football. So it was big news, around the country and definitely here in Indiana. So very eventful day, if for nothing else, with Andrew Luck. Some of the starting, some of the rotation, some of the guys getting to hear from the coaching staff. That was fun, being able to hear from Andrew Luck and to really feel his excitement was exciting today for, I think, a lot of people, and probably for a lot of you guys there who had your recorders in his face. I think that's something that you guys were all probably, if somebody took a picture of 90% of you from behind Andrew Luck's head, you guys have probably all had at least somewhat of a small smirk on your face because you hadn't talked to him in so long. That's
it was just, it's nice for the needle to move on this story. I mean, it's been the same storyline for most of these. That's the thing about it. It's been the overriding theme, since last January, but it hasn't changed much. And today, we finally got a new narrative. We finally got something else to talk about. It felt good.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. George, thank you for your time tonight. It was great to be able to talk to you again. Thank you guys all for listening, for watching, for being a part of this show day in and day out. Really appreciate you guys. George, what are they looking forward to tomorrow? We looking forward to Andrew Luck throwing, right? Because he said he was not going to be out there on Thursday. So we're going to see Andrew a little bit more tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see some of the guys who were out today come back tomorrow. I mean, that would be nice at least to see them get on the field. Anything in particular you guys are looking forward to?
Yeah, well, I mean, with Luck, Frank Reich said he'll ramp it up a little bit more. He's going to do more tomorrow than he did today. So I think that'll be fun to see too. Now, what that entails, I don't know. He didn't do a whole lot today, so more may not be, a significant amount of things to keep an eye on, but it's going to be fun to watch. I think that's going to be, the number one thing again to watch. But I'm looking forward to talking to the coordinators. Easy for me to say. We really have only got them once so far this spring, and when we did, I can't quite remember. I don't think we had seen a practice yet. We'd seen maybe some rookie camp practices, but I don't think we had actually seen a practice yet. So, especially with Matt Eberflus, I think it'll be fun to get out there to find out, how he feels about some of these rotations. Are there a couple linebackers or three linebackers who are standing out in his mind? Is there a depth chart starting to form in his eyes? That to me is going to be an exciting part of tomorrow as well.
Yep, I'm excited for tomorrow just to kind of, catch the residual conversation about that throughout. So we are going to have a live show tomorrow. Everybody will have some call-ins and stuff. So it'll be a good 2 days of Colts minicamp practice for us to all talk about. Some good conversation there. We will do that tomorrow night, same time, 10:30. So if you guys are listening now, make sure that you are getting yourselves ready for that, and check out Stampede Blue and the post that I put up during the day for that to get the phone number. If you will want to write it down now, it's 574-626-8689. You guys can call in and be a part of the show tomorrow. So, George, once again, you are the man, and thank you for joining me tonight, my brother.
No problem. Anytime. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for listening. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Colts Cast.